Good evening and welcome to Fine Point. I'm Christian Hartsock filling in for Chanel Rion. Let's start in Baltimore, where what should have been a routine congressional oversight visit turned into a political spectacle. On Friday, a dozen House Democrats, including Senators Chris Van Hollen and Angela Alsobrooks and Representatives Glenn Ivey and Kwesi Mfume, showed up at the Baltimore ICE facility demanding immediate access. When they were denied entry, they staged a sit-in outside the fallen federal building, banging on the doors in protest. Days later, they sued the Trump administration, claiming DHS unlawfully blocked their oversight duties.
And the fact that we were locked out, literally locked out, despite the welcome sign, shows that they don't want us to know. The Department of Homeland Security, Donald Trump, don't want the American people or the people of Maryland to know what is happening behind closed doors in this holding center where they're detaining people.
Or perhaps it just means they didn't have a tour scheduled. I don't know. DHS didn't hold back in its response. Department spokeswoman Tricia McLaughlin accused the lawmakers of seeking headlines, not transparency. She said their behavior was, quote, a press stunt, and emphasized that security procedures now require advance approval from the DHS secretary, especially after an 830% surge in assaults on ICE officers.
This is an oversight. This is political theater. Congressmen like this one want their 15 minutes of fame. They want their clickbait. They want to do fundraising emails to drive money to their pockets. And that's exactly what this is. And we're not going to let our detainees, our staff, or our security be at risk because these congressmen want to play politics with our detention facilities.
This clash reflects a broader issue, the ongoing attempt to undermine immigration enforcement while feigning moral outrage when standard protocol is enforced. Now, this isn't just about courtrooms and press releases. It's about people, citizens, agents, migrants, and families caught in the crossfire of failed policy and media distortion. That's where the American Border Story, or TABS, steps in. TABS, an organization I'm proudly working with, is a new nonprofit launched to amplify the human impact of the U.S. immigration crisis. Founder Nicole Kipralov was tired of the media sanitizing or ignoring the real consequences of open border ideology. Instead of offering abstract statistics or politicized outrage, TABS focuses on human stories, testimonies from law enforcement, victims of cartel violence, and families devastated by drug and trafficking pipelines. Through a combination of investigative storytelling, field documentation, and direct outreach to make the crisis real for the public again. You can learn more about that at theamericanborderstory.com. Now, joining us now is one of my colleagues at TABS, someone playing a central role in that truth-telling mission, Alexis Wilkins, a spokeswoman for the American Border Story. Alexis is not only helping bring these stories forward, she's shaping how they reach policymakers and the public. Hi, Alexis.
Hi, Christian. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. How did you get introduced to TABS, and what attracted you to this org?
Well, I've always thought that the humanitarian side of illegal immigration on the, American citizen point of view was lacking the storytelling. We hear a lot of the facts, which I think are obviously incredibly helpful. But I think what TABS does that's different is it really does emphasize that this is a humanitarian crisis for the average American citizen. We've heard the statement for a long time that every town is a border town, but we haven't seen that put into practice in a tangible way for people who think that it doesn't affect them. Whatever side they're on, it does. And really highlighting these angel families and people who have gone through so much because of this crisis. This isn't about illegal immigrants who've already broken the law once being offered due process in this country. This is about protecting American citizens who are here lawfully, trying to live their lives and being affected by this crisis. So when I had the opportunity to work with TABS and be able to amplify their message and help be a megaphone for that, I jumped at the opportunity.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you did, and that's absolutely right. This is a humanitarian crisis wrought by open borders. We so often hear about the humanitarian crisis inflicted upon migrants, but it's really the open borders industry, frankly, and the profiteers that have been foisting this suffering upon a mass population, including immigrants themselves and immigrant communities that are affected by open borders. Now, we just talked, and you mentioned how every town is a border town. And we opened the segment, as far north as Baltimore. Now, speaking of the Baltimore ICE facility debacle, how does TABS view the growing politicization of access to enforcement sites like these? Does it affect your work directly?
It does. It not only reminds the viewer that Maryland is, again, like you said, a border town, but it also shows that these people who are representatives that are going into these districts, into these detention centers, they are, as Tricia said, playing politics. They are politicizing a crisis, not only for the American citizen, but also for the people that are being weaponized in this war. You have children that the American investigators are uncovering and saving, that the Biden administration was ignoring. You have all these things coming to light now that the Trump administration is there to fix things, and all of their personnel is able to really get in and make sure that the American people are benefiting from the work being done. But these representatives truly are just politicizing something for the fact that they want donations and they want to stay in office in order to honestly abuse the system for another term. So I think that things like this, where they have to take drastic measures or they think that social media is going to be on their side, they're participating in an America that was more relevant 4 years ago than it is now. We have the media now. We have independent media. We have X to fact check these things. They're not going to get away with the same storytelling and lying, frankly, that they did a few years ago.
Yeah, and they're responsible. Those very people, they're responsible for this border crisis. They're the ones who helped fling the border wide open over those last 4 years that you talk about. Can you share a couple stories from TAB's recent documentation efforts that have really stuck with you? Stories that capture what mainstream media isn't showing?
Absolutely. Some of the work that TABS has done in the documentation space, in the mini doc space, where it's really just even these 10-minute pieces that we're putting on social media to emphasize, what the angel families are going through. And these aren't just people on the screen. These are people that I know the personnel at TABS has met, that I've met personally at events that we've done. And you see the effect that it takes on their lives. You have mothers that are sharing their testimony. You have people who we haven't even featured yet. You haven't even heard their stories yet, that have been through so much, whether it's emotional damage, physical damage, you name it. We have these angel families that have been denied from telling their stories. And I think that's what's most startling to me, is until TABS became a resource for these people, they had nowhere to go. No leftist organization was interested in sharing a story that deserves a huge megaphone on it, because it wasn't politically advantageous. So I think, for me, all of the stories we feature are just things that really deserve a spotlight, that would have been ignored before TABS really came to tell their stories.
Yeah, it's true. And this has been a long time coming. Some of the stories that have been highlighted recently, I did an interview with Lauren Phillips, Laken Riley's sister, and their mom, which took place a little over a year ago. And Angie Morphin, Anthony Aguero did an interview with Angie Morphin, which over an incident that happened many years ago. So these are a lot of these stories are long overdue from being heard. Now, TABS is explicitly a more conservative organization, and it also emphasizes empathy and human suffering. How does the group strike that balance between compassion and calling for tougher enforcement? And are these two things paradoxical as many in the mainstream might make them out to be?
Well, that's exactly what I was going to say, Christian, is I don't think that these two things are on opposite sides of the spectrum. I believe that it is compassionate to be hard on the people who are breaking the law. I believe it is compassionate to listen to these angel family stories and try to pass policy and legislation that supports the pain that they've been through, or supports the fact that that shouldn't happen to any other family. Ultimately, it is compassionate to tell the truth. And I think that's some of what, the President Trump, about what President Trump campaigned on, is that it is compassionate to tell the truth about the economy. It is compassionate to tell the truth about what these angel families are going through and what the border actually causes for both the people who are being weaponized in illegal immigration, considering that's so cartel driven, so intentionally, it's a business. It is. We've seen it with NGOs. We've seen it with USAID. We know who's funding these people. We know that it's all kind of coming from the interior of the Biden administration, before that, the Obama administration. We see it get better every time President Trump gets into office. I wonder why that is. So I think that when tabs, I don't know that it's a balance to strike. We're saying that we want to be compassionate to the real humanitarian crisis that exists for American citizens. And yes, we're interested in being hard on illegal immigrants. We're interested in passing policy that prevents violent criminals from being out on the street. And I think that that's compassionate. And I love when Tom Homan speaks about this, because he's obviously a tough guy just in his nature. But the stories he tells about what he's encountered on the job, both with the people that he's made sure that he's gone to work every day to defend and to protect, and also the people that he's ultimately deported from the country in his job. I think that that's a great example of a tough man having empathy for the right things, and I think that that's what TABS aims to emulate as well.
So tell us about your day-to-day as a spokeswoman for TABS. Are you primarily working with the media, with families, or with field teams? And what's next for TABS as the election cycle heats up?
Yeah, so as we start to see the election cycle heat up, obviously we will have messaging that goes along with that. It's really policy driven, as far as our organization goes. We're making sure that policy benefits the angel families and advocating for things like that. But my day to day is being a spokesperson, is interacting with the media, like you said, and we do a weekly or bi-weekly recap called Keeping Tabs, where we update everyone on what happened this week in the border, whether it's good or bad. We want to give people just an encapsulated view on what's going on, because there is so much news coming at us. I think if we have these focused programming content ideas that make sure that people know what's going on. So with how fast everything moves, information is key. So it's writing that programming, making sure that that content gets out, and really just representing the ideas everywhere I go.
Now, turning to another subject, while we have you here, I've read recently that you are secretly an Israeli spy working on behalf of the Mossad. Now, what's the story behind this, and would you care to come clean right here, right now?
Christian, yes, on your show. No, so I have seen this about myself recently. It's certainly taken up some airwaves in a corner of the internet. I find it fascinating because I have a lot of information on me out there, and that seems to be some of the complaint, is that she has no information. Well, my Instagram goes back, farther than I'd like it to. And there's so much information. We moved around in Europe because of my dad's job. The headquarters of Gillette was there. There's so much to go off of. And ultimately, I appreciate the levity because there isn't a lot in this corner, and people like to say some really harsh things. Ultimately, the examples of the way that it's been difficult I can just even only give a few here. But of course, this has been hard on me, on my family. Ultimately, the goal here is for everyone who's doing their job in government to do their job in government for the American people. The American people voted for transparency. We have no idea, me included, how that's happening and how that's being facilitated, but I trust that that's what everyone in the government is doing. So patently know that those statements are false, and everything that I've done has been to educate the youth, try to advocate for the American people, and keep a sovereign America. I think no matter who's on the other side of that, it's important that America is interested in her own interests.
Well, thank you so much for clearing that up, Alexis. And thank you for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Coming up, former FBI Director Chris Wray has been referred to the DOJ for criminal investigation. Mike Howell of the Oversight Project explains why.